Hey everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be discussing Uranus in Gemini, what it means as a general archetype first, and then how each sign is going to be experiencing it based on where Gemini is in their chart. So let's first start with the planet Uranus. Uranus is liberation, it's revolution, it's tearing down structures, places where there's conditioning, and replacing it with a freer, more unconditioned version of that energy. So in Gemini, we're looking at things like communication, which can include media, education, commerce, the economy, any way we as an individual are relating to another individual, or we as a group are relating to another group, anywhere where there's synergy or connections being made, we are dealing with a Gemini archetype. So when Uranus enters the field of Gemini, it's looking to break us free of any constraints we face in communication. So, as a world, what we're going through right now is this huge surge in information, in education, in media, right? It's almost giving a lot of us a bit of paralysis right now, a bit of stuckness, an inability to really feel like we're communicating. It's interesting. I looked up the etymology of communicate recently, and two parts of the Latin root um, translate to sharing, but also making common. So that first part, sharing, there's a ton of sharing going on right now. There's a ton of spreading going on right now of information and ideas. But is anything common? Are we making anything common? Is there any consensus, around the dominant narrative or the dominant cosmology? No, right? Everything feels very fragmented, feels very divided. And so on a positive end, I'm hoping that Uranus and Gemini gives us inspiration for a new way to communicate and hold space for ideas that are different, for experiences that are different. I hope that it collapses in a way these technologies or these media we use to share, to become less isolating and more connective. That's a very positive outcome for Uranus and Gemini. Um, Uranus is an uncomfortable energy, right? It's liberation, it's revolution, it's change. So, very well, as we're progressing towards new ways of communication, there can be a resistance, right? There's a resistance always to liberation. There could be a resistance in understanding, a resisting in hearing other people's ideas, a resistance in any form of communication, making sharing common, making sharing shared, right? So we are coming up against a time where I think the general archetype is about liberating our own voice and liberating our own, authenticity so that we can make connections in the world, so that we can feel ultimately more on the same page about what's going on. So each of the 12 signs is going to be experiencing this Uranus transit differently based on where you have Gemini in your chart, where Uranus will be transiting. And so these themes around liberating, for the sake of communicating and connecting and synergizing more deeply with humanity, is part of everyone's, collective archetypal experience these next 7 years. But through each sign, we can investigate how this might be personally showing up for you. So I want to start with the sign of Gemini, because this transit's all about you, my friend. Let's first talk about where you've been recently. So, Uranus was moving through your 12th house for the past 7 years. And so you could have experienced a lot of unexpected twists and turns and breaking free in your subconscious mind. You know, you could have been recognizing these patterns that sort of get in your way or, you know, isolate you or limit you from being fully self-expressed. And now Uranus is moving into your first house of self, of body, of mind. And so you are experiencing possibly a lot of nervous energy at the moment, as to how you are going to steer the ship of your life now. You know, a lot gets revealed in the 12th house and undone in the 12th house. And as Uranus moves into that first house, it's a new chapter where whatever you've been sensing on the inside now sort of has to come out there on the outside. So one thing you might want to watch out for with this is, you know, making decisions for yourself that are too quick or too rapid or, you know, leave you too unstable. Because one of the feelings that can come with Uranus is this quickness, is this need to change fast. And so just be wary of this and pace yourself and know that something is on its way out of you that in the next 7 years is going to make itself very clear what is looking to be liberated, what is looking to be expressed. All right. So moving on to the sign of Cancer. Over the past 7 years, Uranus has been in your 11th house. So, friends, communities, groups that you work with to create projects or fulfill dreams, you know, anyone in your sort of web of people has probably been a couple things. You know, you've probably met people who've revolutionized your life or help you, you know, create certain projects, have helped you make dreams possible. At the same time, there could have been quite a few falling outs at this time with regards to friends and relationships. There could have also been a huge shift in your mission statement or in your group project work. There could have been this sort of, you know, shift away from maybe what a group and you were working towards and a shift inward to, well, what I want to work on and what is my own unique calling. And as Uranus moves into your 12th house of Gemini, you are getting prepared to really potentially take a step back from whatever these commitments were, whoever these people were. You know, doing things like spending more time in nature, spending more time alone and in solitude and in introspection. You know, also taking a look at how these people or these projects have affected your own mental health. You know, there can be a ton of burnout with Uranus and sort of a need to recuperate and regroup. And so some deeper truth, some deeper thing is looking to emerge and looking to push you to that next phase. So it could feel right now like, you know, you're sort of in the ruins of the past. like something big has happened, positive, negative, whatever, and now you're sort of in this clearing where it's like, okay, well, that's all done. Now I need to rest, or now I need to introspect, or now I need to recharge. And I could be actually getting a lot of messages from within that are then going to teach me what I need to do to move forward. All right, for the sign of Leo. So, in the past 7 years, Uranus has been in your 10th house of career and reputation and public image. So, Uranus brings change, right? It brings liberation. You could have had a lot of changes in your career trajectory and, you know, sort of maybe starting that transit with a bold idea of what you wanted to do, and then by the end it becoming a bit more blurry and out of order, but you ultimately feel more free. Like there's something you're freer to do now. There's some sort of context or mission statement around work that has drastically changed that's freed you to really be and do the things you want to do. And so the question now is, how are you going to fulfill them? How are you going to carry them out? And who are the people, who are the communities and the groups of friends that are going to help you do that? So Uranus is moving into your 11th house, which is a very powerful place for it to be because it means that you are in some ways revolutionizing your collaborator pool. The people that, you have things in common with, finding people who you have things in common with, who you can teach or be taught by. There's some shift into, these greater communities of people you can either work within or influence that is really going to be boosted over these next 7 years. So pay attention to who it is you have in your circle who wants to help you achieve all your dreams. Okay, for Virgo. So you may have recently been coming out of a period where a lot of your beliefs, philosophies, sort of this is what life is all about, have been drastically changing. Uranus has been moving through your ninth house. So you could have been really exploring, your own philosophy, your own spirituality. You may have finished a degree or something along those lines that sort of gave you this whole new perspective on the world. Whatever circumstance it is, your philosophies have changed, and what this is all for has changed. And so now that Uranus is moving into your 10th house, it's sort of saying, the 10th house is a place of structure and discipline and where we have a sense of responsibility. So Uranus doesn't abide by any of that. It wants to break free from that. So there's something you could be going through where whatever you've learned about yourself, about the world, this possibly disillusioning experience is now influencing the way you approach your career, the way you structure your public image, the way that you go about any sort of responsibility you have to a higher calling, purpose, or job or occupation. So, I think the key is here is to stay very open to the path because Uranus, unlike Saturn, wants to clear a path. It's more of a fire that burns through a field and less of sort of a stable structure. So I would say because Gemini is in your 10th house, curiosity and learning are what you're all about anyways on a career level. You're all about gathering the information and presenting something out of that. So don't think that, a bit of confusion or a bit of discombobulation around what you want to do next is a bad thing. It's actually there to deepen and support any of the work you do publicly in the world. Okay, for Libra. So, Libra, you could be coming out of quite an intense time where, there was either something you gave a lot to, or you shared a lot with others, or there was a lack of clear boundaries as to sort of, what you owned and what somebody else owned. And intimate relationships that tested your own inner psychology, your own psychological limitations. And there's been this great need to kind of break free of whatever intimate connections were holding you down. So Uranus is going into your area now of travel and voyages and pilgrimages and spiritual questing. There's a great need for freedom and to free your own mind from whatever people were feeding it, from whatever mental structures you were sort of intuiting from the outside, and to sort of step into and claim your own. One thing about this, though, is that you might find yourself, because Uranus, once again, is this planet of fast change, there could be almost this quick jolt reaction to relationships that feel uncomfortable, and this need to just go at things alone, and this need to just be alone and isolated and proverbially in the woods, right? Kind of out there away. Um, And while this is important, another factor of the Uranus and Gemini transit is that it's learning how to communicate and it's learning how to be, um, an open mind, which means we have to be open and trusting in relationships again. So while I think it's very important for you to set those boundaries and have that time alone, it's also very important that you don't cut yourself off to other people who could be great influences to your philosophies, to expanding your worldview, to expanding what you even thought you were setting out to do. Because with the previous Uranus transit, it could have felt like, oh my God, I've been tricked or I've been fooled or, I've been sucked into something I don't want to be in and now I have to get away from that. But pay attention to the people, the places, the projects that both provide you connection as well as provide you a space to question. It's sort of like going from a cult to I don't know, to freedom in some way, where it's like, cult to community, we can just say. Let's say in a community, you're allowed to be yourself, and in a cult, you have to be one way and think one way. And you're sort of after more of a community now, a place where you get to be your own person and feel connected and loved as your own person. So those could be some of the themes that come up over these next several years. Okay, Scorpio. So, Scorpio, you have gone through quite the journey in your partnerships, your relationships, your, any sort of agreements that you have with other people. There could have been a lot of changes here. And I want to say that this was really about finding your own voice and your own authenticity and your own power with those you love. The Scorpio energy is very sensitive, and even though it appears this warrior, it is co-ruled by Mars. There is this deep, deep, deep need for intimacy and for trust. And sometimes when we feel like we can't trust people, we can grow a bit paranoid and a bit guarded, and we can actually keep a lot in. And so over the past several years, you've been really pressured to come out with this, to say it like it is. Perhaps other people have sort of said it like it is, and you've sort of taken offense to that or needed to step back from that. And there could have just been sort of a lot of disharmony at times, but it's all been there to sort of build into you this safety and this trust and knowing that as long as I come from my authenticity and my connection to my own power, and my own self-love, then whoever doesn't stick around for that, is not ready for that. But those that do endure these tough conversations or these tough moments, that represent this unconditional love, seeing that in me, which means also seeing it in themselves, those are the people I want to grow with, I want to expand with, I want to move forward with. So right now, there is a lot of changes in sort of perhaps how you are working with other people, sharing resources with other people, merging with other people to deepen your own sense of purpose and power in the world. With Uranus moving into your eighth house, there can be changes in regards to things like, shared property or, shared accounts, or maybe you're opening a business with somebody. But more deeply, it's about finding more and more authenticity in your relationships, more and more bravery, more and more ability to say yes and to be spontaneous and to be free with the ones you love. This is sort of a TMI image, but Uranus in the eighth house feels very kinky to me. The eighth house can be about sex and our deepest, deepest intimate moments. And so you throw Uranus in there, it's sort of like letting your freak flag out with your people and doing big and unexpected things with your people. Now, one of the challenges of Uranus being in the eighth house is that, because it is this house of really merging psyche, merging resource, Uranus in the eighth house can sort of be a wake up call to where we're giving our own power away. So, where are we still sort of hiding or keeping things in or not fully giving ourselves? There could be this deep fear here that if I give myself as I am, I'm going to be rejected or pushed away, or I'm not going to be able to sustain whatever this this shared resource or this shared experience I'm having with a person is, which can bring up a lot of fear, which can bring up just a lot of discomfort in general. So, for these next 7 years, pay attention once again to those really uncomfortable and taboo communications and needs that you have, because they are there to break you free and will probably set others free that you're in close proximity to as well. Okay, Sagittarius. So, Sagittarius, you have been in this process of finding new ways to approach work, to approach service, to even approach your own health. So there's been a lot of changes in how you orient yourself to the day to day. Could have been shifts with jobs, could have been shifts in your own health. There could have been shifts in, just how are you caretaking for your life. And perhaps one of the things you've discovered recently is that a big part of what could feel out of balance or could be affecting your health or could be even affecting your fulfillment at work is this lack of connection with other people, this lack of trust that other people are going to accept you authentically. Uranus was in your sixth house, and the sixth house is interesting because it's a cadent house to the seventh house. So cadence is all about sort of falling away. And I think of sort of the sixth house as like this place where we're falling away or we're not fully getting to experience the angularity of the seventh house, where there's relationships and people are on the same page. We're sort of working for people, or we're tiptoeing around people, or we're in service to people, but we're not necessarily direct one-on-one with those people. So now that Uranus is going into your seventh house, it's like your individuality, your liberation wants you to go to places where you can be in groups of people, where you can exchange ideas. Gemini in the seventh house is a person who really needs people there to discuss ideas and share thoughts and bring them new senses of how to approach their life, how to approach work, how to approach health. So, what you're moving towards is a community or a place where you can be in relation to those who have lots to share with you. And because it's Gemini, it's around information, it's around ideas, education. So, part of your holistic plan for your life is starting to and looking to include others. That's your big step with Uranus and Gemini. Okay, Capricorn. So, Capricorn, you have been, I don't even want to say hard at work, but I want to say you've been having fun at work because there's been a lot of activity in your area of creativity lately. So, you've been getting into this probably more creative flow, trusting in some of your gifts, trusting in some of your talents, and honestly, just in this phase of like, looking at life as this blank canvas and all of your different interests as colors, and you're sort of like throwing a color here and throwing a color there, and there's probably been a lot of testing, there's probably been a lot of kind of trying different things that creatively excite you. And so now you're less like, what am I doing with my life? And you're more like, how can I do this thing with my life that I love in the proper right ways? Like, how do I be consistent at this? How do I like build something from this? So all these themes around process are going to be really activated over the next several years. And one of the issues, you can run into when Uranus goes into your sixth house is sort of not wanting to settle on a process or a routine, or kind of freaking out that it's going to limit you from chasing this creative vision or that possibility. And so Uranus in the sixth house really says that you are going to be learning how to find your own unique way of doing work, of doing process, of doing procedure. There is no easy answer to this, but you are going to be, in a sense, mastering your own approach, methodology, pace to creating the things you want to create in the world. So, this is also a time where you're probably taking something that you've been very passionate about and you could be turning it into a service, or you could be professionalizing it in some way, or you could be really offering it to other people who need it. Um, Simultaneously, I'm thinking of all these significations now. You know, uh, there could also be the possibility that something gets very intense over the next few years on you, service wise, routine wise, and takes a toll on your health. So you want to be, also looking out for your health and ultimately sort of coming back to this, why am I doing this in the first place? It's from love, it's from creativity, it's from passion. And so I need to take good care of my heart in order for my limbs to work to actually do the physical work I need to do. So maintaining a balance, because you are the sea goat, with one hoof in the water and one on the mountain, meaning one hoof in the unconscious, the mystery, the well of creative source and inspiration, and one hoof on the physical ground, where you're taking things from the water and putting it on land. So, as a Capricorn, it is always about finding that balance between sort of the earthly and the more watery psychic realms. But this is something that this transit's really going to help you work with within this archetype. All right, Aquarius. So, Aquarius, over the past several years, I want to say that there has been a ginormous shift when it comes to your inner foundations, which that can be your own psychology, your own home, your parents or your family. There's probably been a shakeup here, unexpected twists and turns, really a whole resetting of learning to feel safe, of finding security, of finding, a grounding for yourself. Um, this is ultimately about developing a new self image, right? You've been developing a new self image, a new orientation as to who you are and what it's all about. Because when Uranus goes through your fourth house or is in Cancer or is touching the moon, we're reevaluating who we think we are. And that can be very destabilizing. But it can also be very freeing. So chances are there's a lot that wants to come out of you right now. There's a lot of sort of free flowing creative energy, and you could just sort of be in this place of like, let's throw it out there and see what sticks. And um, one thing you want to be mindful of here, though, perhaps, is you know, whatever pain we go through or suffering we go through, often I find myself in this pattern where we get through it and then we're just like, all right, I feel great. I'm ready to have my cake and eat it too. But I feel like there's a real thing coming in for me here with you where there is this need to transmute, which also means transmit whatever struggle we've recently been through into the work we're doing. So, whatever has caused us to change, say it is something with the home, say it is something with, your family, or your lineage experiencing some sort of disruption, some sort of issue. You, by now moving into this new phase, have an opportunity to take that struggle and to paint it and to express it and to help liberate other people through your artwork and through your creativity. So there's something for you in this greater archetypal mission of Uranus Gemini shifting communication, where your art and your own visions can be really a canvas for this time to paint itself on and express a new vision aloud. Okay. So Pisces. Pisces, you could have been in this phase recently where there were just a lot of new friends coming in, a big community being built, neighbors, that you're connecting with every day, siblings, even that you're reconnecting with. This sort of sense of, whoa, all these people are sort of awesome and helping me feel more awesome and helping me feel liberated and whoa and wow. And, the communities you're a part of, in other words, have served as this sort of template of liberation and have given you new ideas and new perspectives and new ways to kind of look at things. And so this is sort of anything moving through your third house where Uranus was can be a bit exhausting, right? It's a cadent house. So it can kind of feel like, oh, draining, all the social energy. And so now you're in a phase where you're looking to put down new roots. You're looking to sort of root into, be it a new physical home or just an internal home. You're sort of letting all these insights and social connections distill into something that is a center for you. Um, and the problem with this is that it starts as a spinning top, right? And it takes a while to slow down. It takes a while for us to come off of these radically social experiences or expansive experiences and sort of find our center again. So over the next 7 years, you might be going through a lot of changes with, it could be anything from where you live to how you sleep to how you find a sense of peace and stability. It could feel that sort of there is nowhere that's stable at times, and that you need to find sort of your own authenticity where you are. Like there could be a lot of, oh well, I need to go over here and do this thing, or the grass is always greener. But really the challenge is to claim your own authenticity wherever you are, to sit in the uncomfortable feelings and to kind of play the long game with yourself, to not run away from yourself, to stay grounded and to learn to communicate with those closest to you, to learn to communicate with yourself, to have a healthy inner dialogue, and to not let this sort of part of you that wants to run, blah, 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 actually run, but to kind of keep it there, to sort of alchemize it into something that can be, a base, a garden bed from which a new life can grow. Okay, moving on to the sign of Aries. So, Aries, you may have been in a situation lasting the past 7 years where there's been a lot of shifting around worth. And worth is a big, big word. So, let's break it down. Most importantly, self worth, right? So, what are my worth and what are my values? That's likely been changing. There's also changes to finances because whatever we think we're worth or supposed to be doing, right, is going to drive what we choose for work. So that's changing. Could feel a little bit unstable financially. But ultimately, this has been a good thing for you because it's been a time of really breaking free and liberating from the values that, make you think small or make you think low of yourself or don't allow you to fully be in the abundance of you. So whatever has been happening, although it may have been stressful and confusing at times, it's ultimately serving you in this sort of opening up to, yeah, I actually really like this. Or actually, I don't need to make $1 million every year. I can just, work two cafe jobs and get by that way. Or whatever it is, you've been making a life that works for you and sort of deconditioning from these ideas of what you need to be doing or what job or career or degree you need to be pursuing. So now Uranus has some really exciting things in store for you. It's going to sort of introduce you now to the people who are also on that same wavelength. So you're going to start perhaps finding community and finding connection with people with similar values to you. Now, this also means that there's going to be a shakeup with those you're in community with already. There's going to be a shakeup with, any friends, neighbors, siblings, right? Classic third house significations that sort of hold you back from exploring what you want to be exploring. So, take all advice with a grain of salt is sort of my 2 cents for this. Investigate ideas and people that make you interested, that turn you on. This is a time to really get a taste of a new flavor of your soul that's been looking to come through these past several years. Okay, and lastly, Taurus. So Taurus, over the past 7 years, there have been what a lot of astrologers might call a major glow up. Like you've been going through a major glow up. There's been changes to your physical health. There have been major changes to your mindset. There have been major changes just to how you drive your life. Like what kinds of day-to-day things you're doing, what kind of long-term goals you have. There's been this whole change, this breaking free. And, because Taurus deals with values so much and survival so much, it's all about this. It's all about like, you know, a shift in values, a shift in sort of getting out of survival mode and maybe learning to live with more comfort or less comfort. Um, so you're probably feeling really freed up, but you're also probably feeling a little disoriented as to like, I feel confident in myself or I feel freer in myself. But now I want to harvest that. Now I want to invest that into something. I want to do something new that gives the world value. How can I share my value with other people? What can I do to sort of extend this journey I've been on and bring it out into the greater world? So, I've been thinking about Taurus and Taurus rising and how Gemini is your second house. And Gemini being in the second house shows that you really value learning and you really value communication and you really value new ideas. And so I think there's something here about learning to value your own ideas more, learning to value what you have to say more. Often anything in the second house can be sort of an area where we feel we lack something or something's not good enough or something needs, you know, to kind of be kept unnecessarily low or out of view. And so I think that you're kind of hitting this point where you're like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to share my thoughts, or I'm going to make a blog, or I'm going to do something where I get to really share my values, be a mentor, be a coach, be whatever, because you have now gone through your own journey of liberation. And there is this need, desire to do that for other people in some sort of way. Um, One thing I'll mention here is that on the more practical, mundane side, there could be more sort of ups and downs in finances and sort of material comfort. There's this, once again, thing that happens when we go through some sort of spiritual or liberation process where, the structures of our life temporarily disintegrate and things feel really out of order. And it's because they're alchemizing back into something. So trust that if the inner feels really different, the outer is going to be quite discombobulated. And that as you continue living in the truth that you have accessed from within, all the outer elements are going to line up. But it's likely going to accompany these questions of, am I living my values? Am I living in my new personhood? Am I being brave? When we are doing all those things, Uranus in whatever house it's in brings great rewards. Like when we are honoring our authenticity, honoring where our spirit wants to go, undoing our conditioning, Uranus loves that. And, being in the second house means that if we choose to do something avant-garde as our day job, or we choose to do something more aligned, Uranus in the second house, it's going to reward that. It's going to want to support that. So there you go. Those are the 12 signs, and that's a tidbit on Uranus and Gemini. I also wrote a blog on this that's called July Horoscopes. Goes into a little bit of other horoscopy for July, but is mainly focused on Uranus and Gemini. So you can read more and find journal prompts there on my Substack. I'll link it below. Okay, thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.